Welcome to the We Watch This Movie podcast, the greatest Australian film and TV podcast on Spotify and Apple, according to me. No official sources there. I'm joined as always by a man who loves A24, he loves David Lynch, and he loves a bit of the theatres. His name is Jackson. How you doing, bro? He's not even going to talk. Yeah, there you go. Great podcast host. I'll just host the damn thing myself, hey?
Wouldn't that just be your dream? Working on your own, pumping out as much or as little content as you like. I'm sure you'd even come up with some of those creative video titles that you might see on our editor's YouTube channel. What was one of the most recent ones? Was it Uncensored Cyberpunk Genitals, Big versus Small?
Oh, how did you know it was that exact title? It's like I told you.
It's like you told me. I might have dreamt it once. Or maybe I saw that title going inverted through time. Dan Allen Movies. I am fantastic. I've never been better. And I cannot wait to get stuck into today's movie for episode number 41 of the We Watch This Movie podcast. Listeners, for those who are tuning in for the first time, we sit down, we dissect, we talk about the latest and greatest in film. If it's contemporary, if it's cinema, you bet we're going to have a chat about it today. And if there's anything you can say about the movie we're going to be speaking about, it's definitely cinema. It's definitely got some big names both in front and behind the camera. And I'm not talking about the man opposite me on his webcam. That's right, listeners. The video cast is on YouTube. Hello. Go watch us there. Enough ranting, enough rambling, enough raving. Dan Allen Movies, episode number 41. What are we going to be discussing tonight?
Hillbilly Elegy.
No, I thought your mama was going to be all right. Be happy. I know I could have done better. But you got to decide. You want to be somebody? You got to write your own life.
Don't make us your excuse, JD.
Family's the only thing that means a goddamn. You'll learn that.
What a cardinal sin, though, this movie makes. I mean, any film that references a better film in it, it's not off to a great start. All right, here's going to be my best Appalachian, however you want to pronounce it, attempt at the synopsis for Hillbilly Elegy. Here goes. No, I'm not going to do it.
We've broken Jackson. 40 episodes in.
42 recordings. Anyway. J.D. Vance, a former Marine from Southern Ohio and current Yale Law student, is on the verge of landing his dream job when a family crisis forces him to return to the home he's tried to forget. J.D. must navigate the complex dynamics of his Appalachian family, including his volatile relationship with his mother Bev, who's struggling with addiction. Fueled by memories of his grandmother Mama, the resilient and whip-smart woman who raised him, JD comes to embrace his family's indelible imprint on his own personal journey. Where do we begin with Hillbilly Elegy?
It's one of those films that, on paper, you've got a great cast, a great director, in my opinion. You got the story to back it up, the true story. Netflix, the money maker. Everything's there. And after it all, you just left going, it was all right. Look, Glenn Close, great performance. You know, we were talking off air and we said, look, she deserves it for this one. She deserves the Oscar. This might be the time in a soft year, probably a soft field. She should get it. She's our early prediction. And, she's been nominated 7 times for that Oscar, so it's a matter of time. Amy Adams, again, she's been nominated 5 or 6 times.
Six times. They've actually got 13 Academy Award nominations between them without one win.
Well, this isn't the one for her to win it. I think she overacts in this. I really do. Not to say it was a bad performance, but you look at some of the clips in the trailer and it's just, you can't help but feel like she's not playing, she's just acting. She's not the character. She's not embodying this character. She's just acting, trying to keep up with Glenn Close. And also the lead guy here, I don't know his name, Jackson. Have you got it in front of you?
Gabriel Basso.
He didn't do it for me. I hate to say it. He's a lovable guy. He's a great guy in real life from the interviews I've seen. Lovely guy. Unfortunately, he didn't have the likability I was looking for in this scenario. I actually liked his girlfriend more than him. And he was the main lead. He was going to be that, not redemption story, but he was what was going to be the feel-good moment at the end, and it just didn't pay off. So what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to echo a lot of your sentiments here, Dan Allen Movies. You've pointed out in previous episodes that we don't often agree, particularly when it comes to talking about acting and performances, and maybe even for our final ratings, which could be a soft spoiler for much later on here in episode number 42. Look, I think this is can be summed up best. In doing some research for our episode here today, Dan, I listened to what Mark Kermode had to say. Famous British film critic, works at The Guardian, excellent all-round bloke. He said, you look at this movie and you don't necessarily watch it. And I think that's a pretty good way to sum it up.
What does he mean?
Well, you feel quite distanced from it because there's never that emotional hook and like when we say hook, it's just coming at you like a serial killer. This wants to rope you in, tie you down, and start beating you over the head with its melodrama to warrant some kind of emotion out of you. But if you've seen any of these movies, particularly from Ron Howard's filmography, he's not a subtle filmmaker, and neither are his more emotional pictures like Cinderella Man or A Beautiful Mind, both ironically starring Russell Crowe. It doesn't quite hit, and we understand it's so obvious where it's meant to be, quotation marks, pulling at our heartstrings. And sadly, the screenplay doesn't do this story enough justice. I mean, it's very shallow, it's just surface level, and it's lacking any obvious social commentary in an attempt to just hone in the tale on J.D. Vance, played by Gabriel Basso, on his trials and tribulations. As a result, though, it falters, and it ends up just being a whole bunch of scenery-chewing dinner for Amy Adams and for Glenn Close, and it's too unfocused to really come together coherently. The fact that it's jumping between 1997 and jumping between 2011, it doesn't quite work. It has enough working parts, and this is a case of the sum is lesser than its parts.
I don't actually think it's a bad movie, though. Whereas you might disagree by the sounds of it. I don't think it's a bad movie, but I don't think it's a good movie. I think it's somewhere in the middle. And Netflix have a knack for doing this. With their movies. They just always seem to be meandering around that 6 out of 10, 5 out of 10. And it's like, you've got the ideas, you've got the talent. What's going wrong here? Ron Howard is a great director, in my opinion. Okay, I know that a lot of people don't agree. But you look at movies like Rush, which I thought was a phenomenal movie. In the Heart of the Sea, got a bad rap. I liked it. He actually did Solo, a Star Wars story, which wasn't that bad.
Very unnecessary, but I'll agree with you there. While it's unnecessary, it's certainly underrated.
Yeah, and then you've got, Frost and Nixon. You got Cinderella Man, of course, Beautiful Mind with Russell. Well, they were probably his golden years, you would say. So he's put out a lot of good stuff. And he's got a knack for working with Hans Zimmer, who, again, pops up here for the score. And it's funny because when I was hearing the opening music, I'm thinking, wow, this music's good. And then you see Hans Zimmer, I'm like, I dead set said it to Shaney as we're sitting there. I'm like, this music's pretty good for a movie like this. And bang, Hans Zimmer's there. It's just, I had to laugh. But he doesn't have anything to work with. I think he pops up here and there, but the score's barely noticeable. I thought it was too I thought it was too long as well. I thought it dragged on for probably half an hour too long. Too much screaming for me. Too much. Like you said, it's a battle to get through. It's just a battle, isn't it?
Yeah, I summed it up with a message I sent to you just afterwards, which is this movie is about as enjoyable as tearing off a Band-Aid. Because
God.
it's not the most fun watch. And look, that doesn't necessarily mean it's then going to outright be a bad film. We've talked about plenty of uncomfortable pitches here on the show. Point to something like The Platform, which at times will have, again, you squirming in your seat. Or even listeners, we are recording out a sequence here. We've already done episode number 42, Possessor, another really tough film to digest. But that's intriguing. That's entertaining. I'm sorry, but this just isn't all that entertaining. I am going to outright say that this is a bad movie. It's not a horrible film, and it's far from the worst that we've even seen this year. For me, that honor's going to go to Artemis Fowl. For you, that might go to 365 Days. But it should be a heck of a lot better given the talent involved. Again, you want to say that Ron Howard is a great director? Sure, I think he's made some great films, but if you go through his filmography, his track record isn't stellar, isn't the best. He's made films like Apollo 13 and A Beautiful Mind, which between him and producer Brian Grazer, both of them formed Imagine Entertainment going on to nearly 40 years ago now. They've won Oscars. They have hundreds of Emmy nominations, as well as dozens of Oscar nominations under their brand. But they should know better than to work with what they've got given here. Even, Dan, I found some more interesting facts in my research. We've got a screenplay here from Vanessa Taylor. Vanessa Taylor, Academy Award nominated screenwriter, having done The Shape of Water alongside Guillermo del Toro. There's so much talent at play just behind the camera, let alone in front of it, when we talk about 13 nominations between Amy Adams and Glenn Close, that it is such a disappointment that it wasn't stronger and it couldn't truly entertain and enthrall. That's coming for you and I. You said it's not necessarily good or bad. I'm going to say it's bad. I don't think either of us are going to recommend this, but audiences have really clung to this story. And not even just here in the movie Hillbilly Elegy, but from its adapted book of the same name, the eponymous book by J.D. Vance. And I get why. I want to ask you about your opinion. Does this story resonate as much with you as it does with me? Despite not thinking the movie was great, I understand the story and why it really affects so many people. What about you, Dan?
Yeah, a story like this, I've talked to a lot of people about this one, and the majority of them actually found it quite a touching film. I think I always call call out the casual movie fan, right?
Those filthy casuals.
When I say that, I mean all they care about when they sit down and watch a movie is the story good. That's it. They don't give a crap about the music, the cinematography, the editing. They want to see a good story. And what's here is a good story, even though it's not well written, right? So a lot of them are actually liking the film. You know, my girlfriend actually, she said she'd give it a 7 or 8 out of 10.
I believe Shani said an 8.
And look, we don't agree with many of her opinions. She hated Interstellar, so she can be thrown off a bus. But
thrown off a bus. You're going to be sending that one into her, don't you worry.
Of course you will. But a lot of people, and you look at these user reviews, and they want to know why the hate. And this is the casual fan pushing through here, I believe, that is seeing it for the story and not the sum of its parts, I guess. So it did resonate with me, the story, and at times I did find it emotional in certain points, but not enough for a story like this. And I don't like how critics are saying it's Oscar baity and this and that. I find that a bit of a cop-out. I don't care about that crap. Yeah, I don't believe movies are made to get awards. I don't think Ron Howard came out with this and said, look, I really want to win an Oscar for this one. Like, I just do not believe that he's doing it for that reason. So...
Yeah, it's certainly a narrative. And that really is, it is pretty sensationalist and drum up the fact that movies can be called Oscar bait. I'll agree with you there. But that doesn't discount or discredit the fact, and again, I'm going to use fact, that there is quite a bit of overacting. And for you and I, that does put up a bit of a wall there between us getting hooked into what otherwise might be an emotional story. Although really the problem here does go down to the storytelling and less the technical aspects in front of the camera and more so behind. I found it to be incoherent, and that's its biggest problem.
Yeah, I also found it blended. Yeah, there was some parts that were funny, and it came in at awkward times. Like, I just don't know if they nailed the tone. I guess he tried to make it wholesome and like, everyone can relate to this. We're fighting 1 minute, we're laughing another. It's like a normal family, but I don't believe it came across like that perfectly the way he was hoping, Ron.
It felt like a stereotype
It did,
of what a family might be, and less about hillbilly family and Appalachian, I can't even say the word, family, mountain people living the hills, whatever those American stereotypes might be. For us here in Australia, it's a little bit different. But yeah, it just kind of felt like actors hanging out on screen pretending to be a family. And it had skipped a lot of beats to get to that point. Even though it was nearing 2 hours, you said that it could have been about half hour shorter. I don't know if that would have helped because of the picture it was trying to paint, but it did fail to paint that. And it was just like, okay, I'm watching a movie.
Yeah,
we weren't wrapped in.
I think at the end of the day, you walk out of this one and you think, yeah, Glenn Close was awesome.
Yeah.
She was great, and that's the biggest takeaway for me anyway. Like you said, I can't recommend it unless you're like my girlfriend and just love a true story. As soon as you see the true story, it's an 8 out of 10. There's something about these people that as soon as it's a true story, they love it because they just, there's some people that can't escape from reality when watching a movie where you and me, we actually like worlds like Blade Runner and we like to escape into these different worlds, but some people just want it to be grounded.
I know. If all they want is based on a true story, go watch something like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That's got one of those cards in front. I'm sure Shaney would love it.
But this is another classic case, I think, and I'm not a book reader, but where the book is better than the movie. You always hear it, but I think this one, I could pretty much guarantee that, because I know a lot of people love this book. I've heard a lot of people loving the book. I don't know when it came out, but I think it's been a while since it came out. But
maybe in the last 10 years. Yeah, probably in the last 10 years or so, I suppose, Dan. Consider that some of the same criticisms of the movie exist for the book. Now, neither you or I have read it, so again, we're only citing in research done here, people. We haven't actually read this material. And for those that want to point out how this book could be seen as like a right-wing manifesto and how this book may have influenced the white working class to then vote for Trump in the 2016 election, we're going to pop all that to the side, particularly Ben Shapiro bashing on critics. I have here Ben Shapiro a few days ago, since we've recorded, uploaded why Hollywood elites rejected Hillbilly Elegy. So if anyone's right-wing, that tells you a little bit about it. But anyway, of the book, some of the criticisms were saying that there were mass generalizations made by J.D. Vance about his own upbringing, and that what he was putting down on paper was more so just pointing out stereotypes and less going into the background of these people. And I guess to a fault, you can kind of look at this as also being narcissistic, that for J.D. Vance, at least portrayed by Gabriel Basso in the movie, pretty much everyone was holding him back, particularly his family was holding him back from getting out of that cultural impoverishment, from rising above. And you can kind of look at it as poverty porn. I get that. Then if you are a casual moviegoer who looks at this story and sees, this is about family and responsibility and the duty you have to your loved ones and those around you, sure, I get it, but it's not really subtext. It's pretty shallow. It's pretty surface level. And these generalizations aren't going to hit home for me. Are they going to hit home for you?
I'm shaking my head. No, they're not. They're not, unfortunately. Jackson, let's hear what the critics had to say. Or maybe we don't.
Oh, we don't hear it.
It just depends on where you're from.
Jackson's Ratings.
Imdb, Rotten Tomatoes, Audience Score, and Letterboxed.
I've got something new here for Jackson's ratings.
Shorter.
Moving on to the ratings.
I hope it's half as long. Here we go.
Let's take a look at our 4 categories. Okay, IMDb.
I
Rotten
should say
Tomatoes.
make it longer, because that'll give me more of a chance of making it shorter. Go ahead.
Do you want it longer?
No, no. I want it shorter. Go ahead. And it's nothing against you, Jackson. You're the king. You're the master. It's the content, not you. Go ahead.
Can I talk now?
You sure can.
Let's take a look at IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, Metacritic, and Letterboxd. I want to point out the differences in opinions we're going to hear on these sites and these scores. From the top, so far on IMDb, Hillbilly Elegy has been rated 6.7 out of 10 from 12,537 user ratings. Here's some of the headlines. Here's some of what the people on that website are voting when it comes to Hillbilly Elegy. 8 out of 10. Well, I enjoyed it. Don't know why there are such low scores and reviews. It was a very engaging movie and the acting all around was top notch. 10 out of 10. Life can be hard. 50-year-old Asian male here. I've had a charmed life, so I can't relate to the crazy hardships. Not sure why, but I was tearing up a lot though. Kind of embarrassing because I'm watching it here at work. 10 out of 10. Thank you. This movie makes me to want to be a better man, period. Thank you for all the actors and actresses that made this happen and gave it their all. I guess I'll be seeing Glenn Close at the Oscars again. It just made me feel. Thank you. Okay, that's IMDb. On to Rotten Tomatoes. Here's where the fun really begins. 26% of critics have given this a fresh review. So on the tomato meter, it's not looking great. 1 in 4 critics, I suppose, giving it fresh. Its average score is 4.60 out of 10 from 223 critic reviews. Yes, listeners, Hillbilly Elegy is rotten. Now, 1 in 4 critics haven't given it a fresh review, but its average rating is 4.60. This isn't the worst movie of all time, people. If you stumble upon this and you have a good time, that doesn't mean you don't like film, okay? If it doesn't resonate with you like it didn't for us, awesome, we're on the same page. If you're on a different wavelength, that's fine. Here's what some of the critics had to say. Adams and Close deserve better than this relentlessly gloomy, often trite movie. We all did. There's only a vague message about bootstraps and personal responsibility and a whole lot of bad wigs. Hillbilly Elegy and its Oscar dreams are all sizzle, no steak. So critics are really tearing this thing to shreds. Looking at the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, 85% of audiences have given this a score of 3.5 out of 5 or higher. Its average rating is 4.25 out of 5 from 1,111 user ratings. So those casual moviegoers and even people who are casting their vote on Rotten Tomatoes are championing this picture. On to Metacritic very quickly as Dan's least favorite of all the 4 categories, so I'll move on from them in just a moment. 39 Metascore from 41 critic reviews and an 8.0 user score from 135 ratings. Fabulous story. Anyone who disagrees is living in a box. This story is based on real events that is America's story. It's not perfect, but that's real life. See this movie, 10 out of 10. On the flip side, the performances create anthropological distance, not human empathy. A 4 out of 10. Finally, your favorite, our favorite, still not sponsoring us, probably never will, but we're going to shout them out yet again. Letterboxed. 2.4 out of 5. It's been watched by 17,217 members, rated by 14,330 of them, and liked by 1,764. Pretty middle of the road stuff. Let's shout out some of the most popular reviews on that website. More and Peepaw use Hill People wisdom to help huge fat pussy get an internship at the Heritage Foundation. Got to admire Ron Howard for making sure Glenn and Amy keep a healthy social distance from that Oscar. The postman knocked on my door halfway through the movie. We had a very good conversation. The interaction between us was so fun and amusing, unlike the script of this movie. So there is some pretty creative stuff coming out of Letterboxd. That's
Letterboxd is great for that.
They are great for it. A 1.5 star and a 2 star. I mean, I think I'm going to mention it because it was pretty funny. But if you want to laugh, go and read some of the Tenet reviews, and people talk about how sexy the movie is and how sexy Robert Pattinson, Elizabeth Debicki, and John David Washington are, because it's just an absolute stuff. But look, it's a huge divide. This has been polarizing for audiences, for critics, and it is that touching story that's reaching out to a lot of people. And yeah, I mean, sit there, look at it. It's pretty enough. The cinematography's fine. The music's fine. The performances are very good while the script's lacking. It's just not all that great.
It sounds like if the story resonates with you and you find it emotional, then you seem to give it a higher score by the looks of what people are saying. Now, Jackson, I want to review your rating segment then. So I thought you did a really good job just then. All I would say is chop out Metacritic. They can go just like that, completely wipe them. Audience score I didn't mind it this time, but I feel like that can go as well. And look, when you say, you said IMDb, you said 6.7, 12,564. We didn't need to know the 12,000. Just call it 12,000. We don't need to know about the 563 others, all right? 12,000 people. Round it up or round it down, right? And then Letterboxd, we don't need to know how many people liked it. Just give us the score. So overall, I'll give your segment this week a 3.5 out of 5. I thought it was a good improvement. But I think you can get it down next week. And we're going to get you to a 4 next week. Just trim the fat. We're going to be golden. Anyway, Jackson, Hillbilly Elegy, I want your final conclusion and your final rating on this film.
I'll see you next week for our catch up on my ongoing performance. Thank you very much, Mr. Alan.
It's not
Movies.
often. Hey, it's not often that your performance reviews live on a podcast in front of millions of listeners, is it? So it is a daunting thing for you, but I think you can improve. So
it's not often that it's in front of millions.
Not often. Okay, go ahead. Oh, geez.
All right. I just want to, before I go into this final rating, I want to share something anecdotal for a moment. Really soft trigger warning here for our listeners. So if you don't like discussing some disturbing, some challenging stuff, maybe skip ahead a couple minutes. I've grown up around and currently do live around some types who, while here in Melbourne, Australia, are they hillbillies? No, but you could see them very falling into some of these same stereotypes and generalizations as Amy Adams' performance as Bev. People who have had substance abuse issues, people who have problems, I guess you could say, it's very gross to say, but I'm going to say it anyway, sorting their life out and getting their shit together. And I've seen people in JD Vance's situation having risen up from that, grown up from that, and go on to live successful lives, be it chasing careers in a legal sense, or if they're going into the military, whatever that looks like to them. So yes, this is something real and something touching, and that was clicking in the back of my mind as I'm watching. However, if that were me, I'd kind of feel pretty hard done by when it comes to his portrayal in this film, because at the end of the day, the only way that he grows, he moves on, he gets that job is by cutting off his family. And sure, I get it, in the end credits, we never had the spoiler warning, but who cares? In the end credits, it does mention that, I guess, quotation marks, everyone's gone on to live a happy life, except for Hasta La Vista baby Mormor. So, yeah, but I just didn't care. And I'd much rather talk to the real people I know who have been in similar circumstances than watch this again. Really, that's the reality. If I know these people and I was to show them this, I don't know how they'd feel about it. I don't mean to do any virtue signaling. It's just how I think, I believe. That's our opinions. It's our podcast. If you don't like it, go make your own. Hillbilly Elegy is coming in at 4 out of 10 shoplifted baseball cards.
Yeah. I've got it at a 5. So disappointing on my scale. So below average. I've got average at a 6. Gamers review. Yeah, just disappointing. I was hoping for something quite emotional here, and we were told this was going to be an Oscar contender. And maybe for the acting, we've got a couple of actresses in there, but besides that, you're not going to see this pop up at the Oscars. So it's going to be a 5 from me, 4 from you. That's a 9 out of 20. It's not a great score, unfortunately, and that's going to be probably at the bottom of the barrel, and maybe in the top 10 worst films of this year. I don't know. We have to do that video, that podcast, but it might well be in that top 10 or bottom 10.
It might find its way down there. I mean, when we round that down from a 9 out of 20 to a 4 out of 10, to then a 2 out of 5, I suppose you're right, Dan. It might find its way down there, but it's not the worst movie ever.
No.
For $45 million reported production budget, you could do better than this poverty porn.
45 million?
Considering, though, some of the
What on?
talent, I reckon that's pretty low. And we have
No.
several different
What?
locations. Yeah, I reckon that's
45
low.
million? I thought it was 10 mil. Are you joking?
I'm not kidding.
What
Mate,
are they
you
spending it on?
You got Amy Adams to pay for. You got Glenn Close.
No,
you've got Ron Howard.
that
You've
can't
got
be
big name
right.
producer Brian Grazer. Yeah, mate, this is $45 million.
Wow.
And it is getting a play in theaters in the US to qualify for the Oscars.
That's crazy. So anyway, Jackson. Now, what have we got
What
this
a
week?
smooth segue.
Smooth segue. Hey, I'm the king of segue. Jackson.
Oh, it is your birthday coming up. We should get you one of those segues. Well,
Highlander.
Yep, just burst the bubble. Thanks, buddy. For our listeners who aren't aware, the movie challenge has been back for one time only. Dan's Inferno. We don't need to go into those films again. I survived, and he agreed to honor legendary Sir Sean Connery. I watched Murdered on the Orient Express, Sidney Lumet's film from 1974, and Dan watched Russell McKay's 1986 fantasy film Highlander. I'm eager to hear what you thought of Highlander. Please kick us off, Sean Connery as Juan Ramirez. I think it's Juan Ramirez Villalobos. I must be close. Please.
What is he? A Scottish playing a Egyptian Spanish? What is it?
He's a Scotsman playing a Spaniard playing an Egyptian.
I love that. Hey, I got to give it to you. You know, sometimes you give me these shit films in the movie challenge, but you always get every film that you've given me is a good talking point. I'll give you that. There's always a conversation to be had, and there's always something interesting about every film. You know, Melancholia, I didn't like it, but there was some interesting talking points. Same with Nick Cage movie. What was that called again?
8mm. I thought you liked that.
Yeah, I did. But I'm saying
Okay.
it's still they're just very interesting. So Highlander. Where do I start? I don't know. It's I think I watched a director's cut because it was clocking in around 2 hours from memory, or maybe a little bit below.
That sounds about right.
It started off quite strong, and it's not like a film I'd seen recently, that's for sure. It had its own flavour, that's definitely for sure. The music by Queen, which was brilliant, absolutely loved the music, the soundtrack. Could listen to that all day. And there's this weird like fantasy storyline going on with this guy who's immortal, and it's such a random crazy story, isn't it, really? It didn't have me gripped the whole way, but there was always like moments that pulled me back in throughout, especially when Sean Connery popped up. R.I.P. to that legend. He's a standout. He was hilarious in this. I don't know what him and what's the other guy's name again? The main actor.
Christopher. I'm saying Christopher. Forgive me, everybody. I think it's Christophe Lambert who plays Connor McLeod.
They've got a great chemistry, and
it's infectious, the energy between them.
Yeah, when they're running along the beach. I was sad to see Sean go. Spoilers, but he was my favorite. Just even Clancy Brown as the villain here. He was hilarious.
Isn't he great? It's better to burn out than fade away.
The writing is so terrible. I don't know how to review this because the writing's like terrible but also great. This movie like has everything I want in a film. It's so stupid and crazy, but then for some reason it just didn't fully click with me the whole way. Maybe it's because it's so old. I don't know, but I liked the use of cinematography. I know some people didn't.
Yeah.
I liked it. Again, the soundtrack. But yeah, there's just little bits and pieces throughout that sort of brought me back in, and highlights and that made me laugh throughout. And then you got the big boss fight at the end, which I could actually see the wires on it. Did you notice that? Yeah, well, they try to cover it up with these lightning bolts, but I'm like, I can see through that guy.
Christophe Lambert, practically blind.
Hey, I gotta say, I don't know what he was doing though in this film. What was he going for? What was he trying to achieve? He's a weird dude. He's a weird dude, man.
He's French. And I believe when he made this film, he wasn't a fluent English speaker. So he has this bizarre accent and cadence about him when he speaks. But it doesn't suit his character.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Connor McLeod, because Connor McLeod is meant to have been immortal and now lived for, I think it's for like 500 years. So he's picked up all these accents and he feels like he's kind of from no place. Did you enjoy yourself?
I did. I give it a 7, but
Hey,
I don't know. I have to think about it a bit more. What the score is, but I've got it at a 7 at the moment. So, would I recommend it to everyone? No, definitely not. Definitely not. But for you and me, I feel like if I had you in the room, it would have. I reckon the rating could have gone up. I feel like it's better with friends. Am I wrong?
100%. This is a massive bloke movie. It's funny because you said that it is an 80s film and it does feel very much of its time, but there's also some really out of time aspects to it, like the fact that you have a Queen soundtrack, which is practically timeless on its own, and then these flashes of brilliance throughout. You said about the cinematography, just the material that it covers with all this immortal mythology. And it didn't make that much money at the box office when it came out, but it's a cult movie. It spawned sequel after sequel after sequel, video games, TV series. You understand why it resonated with people because it is a really cool concept. And again, not perfect, but with the flashes of brilliance, I believe it works too. And I'm glad to hear that you gave it a 7.
What's your rating?
I haven't seen Highlander in a few years. From what I remember, it's probably going to sit around that 7 or even an 8. An 8 might be too strong. Maybe for me, you know what? Maybe even for me, it's like a 6 because I remember at some points you do get a little bit restless. But then there's the scenes, for example, with Christophe Lambert, I should say, where he gets up and starts gunning down Nazis, and you're like, I can't believe this movie has the balls for it. Or the fact that that this girl he rescues as when she's very young goes on to be his like secretary, I suppose, and she's like a love interest despite the fact she's 70, 80 years old. It's just so bizarre.
Have you seen the sequel? I didn't even know there was a sequel till today.
Not only is there one sequel, there's a whole bunch of them. And yes, I have watched Highlander 2, The Quickening. Maybe for yourself and our listeners who aren't aware, the original cut of Highlander 2, The Quickening is easily one of the worst movies you could possibly watch. It's practically unwatchable. Most of it looks unfinished. It's rushed. It does reunite Sean Connery. It brings him back from the dead. Don't ask me why. It's not a spoiler, people. It's pretty obvious this happens. And him and Christopher Lambert easily the best part of that movie. The rest of the sequels are pretty much remakes of the first. You can discount them. There's a director's cut for this. There is what's known as the Renegade Cut for Highlander 2. I've seen that as well. It improves things, but it takes it from like a 1 to like a 4 or maybe a 5. And the sequel... I don't know if it's necessarily a downgrade. It's kind of like a lateral move. Rather than having Clancy Brown, you get Michael Ironside as the big bad. So it's got some things going for it. But I'm glad to hear you enjoyed it. And if you recommend it for some of our listeners out there, maybe some blokes or people who like a bit of a cheesy, corny fantasy film, you'll get a kick out of this.
The last 2 things I saw Clancy Brown in were Detroit Become Human, a PlayStation game, and SpongeBob SquarePants. As Mr. Krabs. So he's got a very diverse portfolio, this bloke. That's for sure. If you have a career like him, well done. All right, Jackson, what did you think of Murder on the Orient?
Oh, thanks so much for the winning introduction. Forever full of so much fervor and energy and life.
Hey, we got to keep things moving here.
You said keep these to 30 minutes.
We got to keep the train on the tracks, and we got to keep the train moving for its destination. Go ahead. Is that a better segue for you?
Oh, well, at least it does tie in to Murder on the Orient Express, which ironically the train is stopped for about 2/3 of the film. It's like this podcast.
That's a good one. Oh, far out.
Now, I haven't seen the modern retelling of this classic Agatha Christie novel, tale, mystery, whatever you want to call it, by Sir Kenneth Branagh.
Yeah.
He might qualify for a Hall of Shame or a Hall of Fame after discussing him here on the podcast. I don't know. We'll get to him at some other stage. But look, Sidney Lumet's telling here of it in 1974, the first big screen adaptation for this story. It's pretty fun. Albert Finney as Hercule Poirot is pretty good. Is a blast. You got an all-star cast here. Vanessa Redgrave, Ingrid Bergman, who won an Oscar for it. Of course, Mr. Sean Connery, even John Gielgud and Anthony Perkins from Psycho. It's a pretty good movie. Does it necessarily hold up to today's standards? That's a little bit hard. We are going to be reviewing Mank here on the podcast coming very soon, listeners. And you haven't watched it yet, but in the lead up for Mank, I did sit down and watch Citizen Kane. And the point I'm trying to make here, the tangent I've gone off on, I watched Citizen Kane, which is almost an 80-year-old movie, and I watched Murder on the Orient Express, which is almost a 50-year-old movie, and Citizen Kane feels a lot fresher than this does. This isn't the greatest movie of all time, but it's a pretty good time. It's coming in just over 2 hours. Maybe it could have been a bit tighter, a bit shorter, but the performances all across the board are good. It's consistent with the tone. We find ourselves confused for most of it. We're not sure who could be this killer, what's the mystery. The whole thing unravels in front of our face, and we follow Albert Finney. His great performance as Hercule Poirot. It is enough to keep us hooked without making us feel like we're overwhelmed. We're never going to get to the bottom of it.
This
Please,
is
go for it.
spoilers, but how does it all end in this one? Or can you be vague? Because I want to know if it's the same as the new one.
I'll say this much. We've got good reason to be suspicious of everybody.
Yeah, so yeah. All right. I won't spoil it for you either.
It's adapted from like a timeless novel series from Agatha Christie starring Hercule Poirot. So, you know, you can't expect that much. I don't think this is the best Sidney Lumet film. I can point to something like, I believe he did Network, Dog Day Afternoon. Both of those were released within years of this one. I think they're better movies. Even Serpico, another film by him starring Al Pacino. And he made about 5 films with Sean Connery, another classic to point out as the Anderson tapes. For me, Murder on the Orient Express is going to come in at 7 out of 10 sleeping mustache guards. Dan, you haven't seen this, but you have seen the modern one by Sir Kenneth Branagh. What can you tell us about that?
The modern one is a letdown for an all-star cast, in my opinion. I had the modern one at a 5, unfortunately. The funny part is Kenneth Branagh directed it, and he doesn't have a good track record directing, but he's by far the standout in that film. So he just needs to stick to acting. The guy can act like no one else.
It's the best part. It's the best part. He has the most to do as well. So, but he does it perfectly. If you watch him and then watch him in Tenet, like completely different characters. So he can act, but you know, I was severely let down. You got Johnny Depp, Daisy Ridley, all these. Johnny Depp's in that.
Yeah, all these killer actors, and it just sort of falls flat, man. It really does. So, and maybe it is that ending, which you've alluded to, is the same. Which is spoilers, but that because with a murder mystery like that, I don't know. It needs to have twist after twist for me, even if it is corny. You know
what? We might be looking at this through some. How do I say this? Through some interestingly tinted glasses, because think to Knives Out, released just 12 months ago.
That's the thing,
recording.
Exactly.
And Knives Out was like a whole jolt to the system about what a modern murder mystery could be. I'm watching a 50-year-old film. I've kind of got to be sitting in that mindset, but still we are talking about contemporary stuff. So it's not perfect. I still gave this a very good score. And for you to say as well that it's not the most gripping story, sure it's not, but how much fun do you have watching it?
Yeah. I wasn't bored. I was just disappointed. So
yeah. By the way, just on Kenneth Branagh's track record, I don't know how many Shakespearean films he's directed in total, and you might not know about this, but guess how long his 1996 $18 million Hamlet adaptation was? This was a movie. Just take a stab. How long was this movie?
How long?
Yeah, how long?
4 hours.
Great work on the IMDb, because it was indeed 4 hours
Really?
long.
I was joking.
Absolutely.
I was joking. Wow. There you
Oscar
go.
nominations out the wazoo. One of the biggest casts you can ever assemble. It even has Dame Judi Dench.
I am never watching a 4-hour movie on this podcast. Okay.
Whoa! That's a big claim.
All right. What do you got for me next time for the movie challenge? Have you got anything prepared, or you want me to give you one? I'll give you.
Great question, Dan Allen Movies. I want to go easy on you. I want to give you the week off. And listeners, I tried to weave it in there a little earlier in this recording. You might not have heard me, but we have Dan Allen Movies' birthday coming up in about a week's time. I'm not going to set you anything for the movie challenge. I want you to enjoy, because we are going to be reviewing Mank. It's a meaty subject, and you do have Citizen Kane to sit down and watch as well. That's already 4.5 hours worth of film right there.
Do you want me to give you one, or you want the week off too?
Dan, if you're going to have the week off, you best believe I'm going to be doing as little work as possible.
All right. No
No
worries.
performance review for me.
Oh, there will be. I want to see your Mank Jackson's reading segment. All right, Jackson. It's been a blast as always. We've gone over our suggested time like we always do, but that means it was a good episode, doesn't it?
It sure does, Dan Allen Movies. And wouldn't it just be, on par, on course, the typical track record for our excellent editor to chop this one down to 30 minutes, because I know how much he loves listening to our voices time and time again. Now, if you've enjoyed us here for episode number 42 covering Hillbilly Elegy on the We Watch This Movie podcast, we'd love for you to follow us on our social media at We Watch This Podcast, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. We have it all. Send us a DM. Reach out to at Dan Allen Movies, at Marshall Film, followed by an _. Hit follow on your favorite podcasting platform. While you're there, maybe a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. If you do it, Dan Allen Movies has promised to pay for your Tenet movie ticket. I didn't get a side eye there. I thought I would, but no, it looks like he's definitely promised. If you want to see this show continue, head to YouTube, hit subscribe, drop a like, leave us a comment. We would really appreciate it. For everyone who is still stuck around for the end of this music, go check out Dan Allen Gaming, his Cyberpunk series, the PS5 Central podcast. I'm going to keep plugging this guy until he kills the recording and takes us off air. That has been the We Watch This Movie podcast, and I am out of breath.
Guys, make sure you follow Jackson and give him a message and tell him to do some reviews. All right, thanks, guys.